I get a lot more from the Hebrew definition than I do from our definitions. They're normally a lot deeper, and it is deeper. It says derived from the root word rehem, which means womb. Mercy, compassion, and womb. The Hebrew philosophy is that compassion that I have or I should have should be the same as a mother does for her child, for a newborn. That's why they go with the womb. Now, surprising to me, the one I agree with most is the Latin version. The Latin word for compassion is compate. It's derived from the root word patti. Otherwise, it's not showing up here. Which means to suffer. The prefix com means with. Compati literally means to suffer with. And James agrees with that. I got to figure out why this is not coming up here. That was the whole idea behind this.
Not up there now.
No, it's not up there, Bree. Sorry, guys. Allie's not here. Blame it on her. Still not coming up there. So James 2, 15 to 17. And if a brother or sister is naked and in need of food, but one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give him any of his bodily needs, what's the use of it? So what James is saying here is what the Latin is saying. It's not just an emotion. There has to be some action with it. You can't get, if we're going to act like God acts, if we're going to have the compassion that God has for us, then we can't get away with saying, okay, well, I gave the $19 a month, 63 cents a day, to something on TV, and now I'm done. I've done my compassion duty. It's much more than that. You have to suffer with. I might as well do it anyway. I thought about that when they said suffer with, right? So anybody that's not real young and was ever given the strap by their father was told when the father's getting ready to give him the strap, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. Does that seem familiar to anybody? My thought process was, well, if I'm the one that did wrong, then I should suffer worse than you. So why don't you get down here and I'll strap you? That way I'll feel worse than you, right? But that didn't work out, right? But that's what is meant by it. Like you're putting something into it. You've got something with it. You have compassion. You just don't say, I have so much pity for those people. I feel bad for the people over here, the people on the ninth floor, the people over here that don't have much. I just feel terrible for them, and that's all I got to do. If I don't get off my butt and do something to help them, then I haven't mastered God's style of compassion. Now, Judaism has the 13 attributes of compassion. Sometimes it's labeled the 13 attributes of mercy. But these are, I still can't figure out why I can't see here. What happened is, according to the Talmud, right after the golden calf deal out in Mount Sinai, and Moses comes down and breaks the tablets, and God is angry. He's ready to kill them all. Right? He wants to wipe them all off the face of the earth, right? Well, Moses has to plead with him, tries to plead with people. And Moses, according to the Talmud, didn't want to do this from afar. He wanted to do it face to face. He wanted to say, face to face with God. Well, God wouldn't go for that. And I've missed a slide here, which is really annoying. I don't know what I'm doing here. But God wasn't going to go for that. So in Exodus, I think it's 34, My wife here, go get my papers for me, please, honey. Would you go get my papers? Because I can't see it on here. So, what's that?
Want me to try to see if I can fix it?
Want me to do what?
Do you want me to try to see if I can fix it real quick?
Sure. Yeah, be easier. I won't lose track of what I'm doing. So, if you read one of the Hebrew versions of the Bible, rather than the ESV and other things, the real Hebrew versions of the Bible, it says that God came down and stood next to Moses. And the reason God came down and stood next to Moses is because he didn't want Moses to see him face to face, but he wanted Moses to see, according to Judaism, he wanted Moses to see what he sees. And to see what God sees would open his eyes and he would understand, right? So, I can find it here now. My computer's backing up. Acting up, okay. Now we don't have anything, right? Oh, really good.
That's the verse you were talking about, right? 34:5.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah. Yahweh came down in the cloud and he stationed himself beside him there and called out the name. And then he goes to 34:6, and he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness and rebellion. Now, what Judaism has done is they've taken that in Hebrew, and they've made a prayer out of it, because he said that God made a deal with Moses. That's what the Talmud says. God made a deal with Moses. And this was a, what's the word we use? A covenant that we don't normally talk about. It's not listed in the text, but it was a covenant made between God and Moses that when the Israelites mess up, if they say the prayer of 13 attributes of compassion of God, then they would be forgiven. So some Jews or Hebrews say this every day. Some say it during fasting. I don't want to say all of them, but it's pretty much mandatory that this is said during the high holidays. So this is the reason that they get the forgiveness. Is that going to work? Okay. So this is the Hebrew breakdown of it. Now you're going to see there's a couple different versions of this. There's a Kabbalist version. There's each of the sects have different versions of this. It's all basically the same. They just use some words different, like Adoshem, which is the same thing as Adonai. And so number one is Adoshem, which is I am God before man sins. And the second one is I am God after man sins and does teshuvah. Everybody knows what teshuvah is, right? Yep. Okay. El or El, which a lot of times is just El, but this version that I got has EIL, the source of all energy and living, life-giving force, which is given to us purely as a gift from the Creator. Rahum, compassionate, God's compassion is such that whenever we stop destroying or degrading life while it still lives, God cares for and returns it to life, including ourselves. And that's pretty cool, because we do destroy it. We destroy everything we can get our hands on. But as long as we don't kill it completely, God will bring it back. And you can see that. He does that. I mean, we burn down the forest, He brings back new trees. Everything. It's pretty cool. So new, gracious God's energy of the creation knows no limits. So while we fritter away, God endlessly replenishes it. This is a pretty cool part. God's creation knows no limits. God has no limits. We have limits. We put limits on ourselves, and we put limits on our compassion. We put limits on everything. Right? So there's somebody that needs $1 or needs money or needs food. First thing I think about is, okay, do I got enough to feed my family? I got enough to pay my mortgage. I got enough to pay for my car. Well, after all that figuring, maybe I got an extra few bucks I can give them. You know? But God doesn't do that. God is limitless. So we want to be compassion in the form of compassion that God has, seeing it the way God sees it. Then we give, and we give what's needed, and we let Him worry about it, because He'll figure it out. And we find out it works. I mean, what, 2 years ago, we sat in these teaching meetings. I think it was 2 years ago. How long have you guys been singing with us? About 2 years now? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. About 2 years ago, Brett said, I just can't do this no more. Right? We sat in a teaching meeting. We said, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to play YouTube? We got nothing. We've got no music, nothing for us. Within 2 weeks, we had a full band. You know, it just, things worked out and they came up and said, we can do it. God provides. As long as we have enough faith to let Him do the provision and quit trying to mess it up for ourselves. That's a typo. I'm supposed to say, it says, Iraq, it's supposed to say 6 there. I don't know how to pronounce this stuff. Iraq, Apayin. Can you say it? There you go. Okay. Slow to anger. We are allowed time to overcome our weaknesses, to learn slowly how to use the powers we've been given to uplift morally our own lives and the lives of those we come in contact with. How many times have we slowed anger? I know I'm not. You know, to be able to sit back and say, hold up, just wait a minute, see, count to 10, whatever it takes. But God is slow to anger. If He wasn't slow to anger, we'd all be dead. Because I know we piss Him off. I mean, I do, probably pretty regularly. Rav Hesed. I don't even know a word, Hesed. Abundant kindness. To the extent we are devoted to our extending God's goodness in the world, we are given the extraordinary grants of energy and satisfaction for our efforts. And I think you can see that when we watch volunteers work, or even when we go out and volunteer, or we go out and help people. It seems like we can just work a lot longer than we can than when somebody's paying me to do it. When it's a job, I get worn out, I can't go no farther. But when we have a couple weeks, we have 100 volunteers in here, right? And lately, I haven't been able to stay up past 8:30 yet. I got to go to bed. I'm beat. I'm just falling apart. But during that week, He just seems to give me the energy to keep on going and to keep on doing. Rather than that, abundant truth. God, however, like a good parent, does not humor our foibles and moral missteps, because that would be to our detriment. And so the Creator has arranged destructive consequences for us as a people, not simply for me, which we find particularly painful because they entail punishing outcomes for the innocent as well as the wrongdoers. And we know that because look at the Israelites in the desert. That generation that wasn't allowed to pass over. Not all of them were bad. But God looks at us as a people. We're responsible for each other. And it's our job as a people to correct and to work together to do the right thing. And when somebody goes a little bit astray, it's our job to help pull them back into the fold. If we just look at them as other people, they're other people. You know, they're the problem area down in New Orleans East. That's not my problem. I just don't go there. That's all. Nothing to do with me. Well, God doesn't look at it that way, does He? He looks at us as a people, and we have responsibilities to all the people.
That's why unity is so important.
Yeah, That's right. I'm not even going to try that first word. I know what that means. A lot means actually thousands. Actually means 2,000 or more. Preserver of kindness for thousands of generations. The love that we receive from God and the Sukkah Shel Mitzvah act like a seed of a tree of human fulfillment to the thousandth generation in the future, which can be incredible source of fulfillment in our own lives. And I wrote in there, think Abraham. When the angels came and visited Abraham, he could have probably made a deal for himself. He probably got a new tent, maybe some nice stuff, nice furniture for his tent. Not his concern. His concern was future generations. Every parent in this room, I know, because I know the people in this room, would give their life and everything they got would guarantee that their future generations, their kids and their kids, had a great life. I mean, it would be a no-brainer. And that's what we're talking about here. In fact, I read a book one time that we've had different conversations around here, or at least I have, about whether this heaven is a place to go and what eternity really is and what it isn't and all this stuff. The guy in this book said that the biblical eternity was the generations that followed him. And back then, that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, your kids grew up to be, a son grew up to be what his father was, the generations and generations and generations. So that was the point of thing. What we do today, how we act today, and how good we are with our compassion, and how much we act like God can secure the future of our children. It's a pretty important job. You can't just blow it off. 10, 11, and 12, Messiah, Avan, that's actually Pesha. I don't know why they do a VA. It's Pesha. Haka'ah. Forgiving iniquity, rebellion, or willful sin, and careless or error. Not only does God provide forgiveness, but atonement, effectively short-circuiting, as Rabbi Hurst teaches, the natural process of cause and effect, so that when we do teshuvah, the usual consequences of wrongdoing are lifted up from us. This one's important when you go to the next one, which is the 13th. Who cleanses. When the teshuvah is genuine and complete, the effect of our wrongdoings on us are completely removed. Now, I want to talk for a minute about genuine and complete. Matt often has, and we talk in the meetings, we often talk about giving a reading assignment every week. Well, this week, the reading assignment can be found in a book or on paper. The reading assignment is your heart. I spoke last time and I told you that when I teach and I study for teaching, I normally learn a lot more about me than I'm able to portray to you. And this last number 13 was a big one for me. It's a little bit of an emotional area here for me. Everybody knows what I went through, my drug addiction and the things that I went through. But I tended to take advantage of the society's way of taking the blame off of me. After all, we know the pharmaceutical companies are bad, right? They're the ones that cause all this problem. or the doctors that gave me that started me with the medications, right? It was all their fault, right? Well, that's what I hear on TV every day. That's what I hear everybody say. It's not your fault. Could have happened to anyone. No. It didn't happen to anybody else in this room. It happened to me. It happened to me because I made decisions that destroyed my family. They were my decisions. There's nobody else in the world to blame. And that's tough. But it's also a very important lesson. Because I think too often we get compassion confused. And when somebody has done something wrong, our kids or our friends or anything, our first thing we want to do is say, it's not your fault. Could have happened to anybody. And it is our fault. It didn't happen to everybody. We make decisions and we have to live with those consequences. We can't get true teshuva without genuine and complete teshuva. And genuine and complete teshuva for me was not letting everybody talk about this like it's a little bit of a joke. Letting everybody think that, I just had a bad doctor that gave me this stuff and it wasn't my fault, So that's not genuine and complete. And I want genuine and complete. I want this removed from me, and it can't be. God's not going to remove it from me until I look in my heart and know what I've done and admit what I've done. So that was a big deal for me. So if nobody learns anything from this whole night, I did. So it's a big deal for me.
It seems like, well, if you don't mind me, can you go back to that last slide?
I have no way.
Just press the
Arrow
arrow.
to the left.
Error to the left.
Yeah, again.
There it is.
Is that the one, when the teshuva is genuine and complete, the effects of our wrongdoing on us are completely removed. I just think about, how much you shared and all of your story, and the way your family lives now. And I see that someone just looking from the outside, that your teshuva has been genuine and complete because it's brought you to, and your family, to a new place that you never would have experienced before had you not decided to make those decisions, had you not made this decision on, and who knows, if you hadn't, we don't know, but we do know that this is where you're at today. This is where your family's at today. And it doesn't look the same as it did.
Oh, definitely
5,
not.
6, 7 years
And I think that's part of the one, a few slides before, where God has a tremendous amount of patience.
Right. His
And,
mercy has no limits.
and not only did he lead me here, which brought my family to the point that we are now and how great that is, but he also led me to this verse and to this message, which said I still had a little bit more to do. So now we're going to talk about my favorite verse. So Matthew 25, it's 31 through 36. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. So we're just going to go through the front because I want to talk about the individual things. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels are with him, he will sit on the throne, sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from one another, as a shepherd separates the sheep and the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. I wonder if that's a political thing. I don't know. Just say that. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to see me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or need clothes and clothe you without to eat? When did we see you sick or in a prison and go visit you? The king will reply, I tell you, whatever you did for the one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. Now, Matthew 25 has a lot of stuff in it, and there's a lot of commentary on it. And everybody, every organizational religion takes from it what they want. One of the big questions is, who's he talking to? There's a lot of different answers about that. My solution to this is it doesn't matter who he's talking to. It doesn't matter if these are the people left over after the tribulation. It doesn't matter whether he's talking to the Jews. It doesn't matter whether he's talking to Gentiles. It doesn't matter who he's talking to. He is saying that if you want to be right with God, if you want to be in the kingdom of God, this is what you need to do. He doesn't say anything about, you have to go to any type of a seminary. You don't have to go to any type of anything else. You don't have to even believe anything else. This is what you need to do. If you do this, you're going to be good with God, and the kingdom is waiting for you. If you don't, it's not going to be. That's what the next verse says. It says, you're done. It's over. And we're not going to go deep into that. Now, the reason this is important to me, the reason this verse is important to me, and what I did was, I just put this up here. If anybody wants it, they can have it. I don't want to make this extra long. Everything that he said is somewhere else in Scripture. So these are just some verses for each one of those things. Feeding the hungry, you can find it in Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Proverbs. Giving thirsty drink, Exodus, Psalms, and Genesis. Clothe the naked, Genesis, Ezekiel, and Deuteronomy. Talking to strangers in Leviticus, Hebrews, and Psalms. And visiting sick and prisoners in Isaiah and Psalms. Now I want to talk about prison. This is so important to me. As I was going through my struggles, we all know, or most people know, that I ended up in a mission. And prior to going to the mission, especially after I had Annalisa, I was pretty sure there was a God, but I wasn't too sure what it had to do with me, or what I had to do with him, or what it was all about. And I sat in the mission, and in the mission, in order to eat, you're required to go to church. So every meal, you had to go to church before you go to a meal, right? And they would bring in different preachers in there, and they would have, at that time, it was such a variety. I mean, one time you're talking to what's the ones where you're going to get really good stuff like the Lamborghini and stuff, the prosperity gospels. And next time you have the ones that said everything's already decided, so you might as well just hang it up. It's already figured out. You're just running along here. They had everything you could think of. But I had questions that nobody would answer, and nobody could answer. And one of the big questions I had was, if this God is so great, and he's so compassionate, and if I'm a Christian, then I believe that if a little Jewish boy grows up in his family, and he did everything his family told him to, follow God right down to the letter, worship God, did everything in Judaism you're supposed to do, according to what those preachers were telling me, the mission, he's going to hell because he didn't believe in Christ. And this just didn't make sense to me. So I was like everybody else. I did what I could to escape having to go to them churches every meal. And then we got tied up with the gathering a little bit. And I met Matt and Aaron and everybody. And one of the amazing things about it is, which some of the people here don't know, is that everybody hated going to church, but they were forced to, except every meal. And then you had to go again on Sunday to some church. But the gathering opened the doors and said, you guys can come Saturday night to our church. Now, the mission didn't give you any credit for that. You still had to go to church on Sunday. For the ones you didn't want to go to, you still had to go to all the meal churches and everything else. But the attraction, people just loved it. I mean, sometimes we were taking 2 vans to bring everybody here. They just were drawn to this. And then Matt was coming out. We were working on Lacombe, a property out in Lacombe, and Matt would come out and talk to us at lunch, talk to me at lunchtime, and then a few other people started gathering. And then the next thing you know, we'd be sitting out there at Lacombe at lunchtime, and there would be 30 people coming in to hear him talk. And you could hear a pin drop in that room. So these people that apparently, to the eyes of everybody else who were in the mission, they just didn't want to do a church, were all of a sudden, attracted to this. And one of the questions one of them asked, which was a good question as far as I'm concerned, what's this deal about once saved, always saved? So if I'm saved, that means I can go out and rape and murder, do anything I want, but I'm still saved, so I'm good to go, right? I believe I'm good to go. And Matt said Matthew 25, and read that to us. And things just started clicking for me. And it made so much sense that, I don't know how to explain it, because I guess most people that are Christians at some point, unless you grew up in it and it was just something naturally you did all your life, there was some moment that things just clicked for you. And that was the moment that things clicked for me. And said, hey, there's something to this. And so that's why I wanted to share that with you, that verse with you, because it's all about compassion. It's all about doing like the gathering was doing for us there. They didn't need to. You guys didn't need the gathering didn't need the mission people there. It's not a church that was trying to fill seats. You don't see a collection pan going around here, so we're not trying to make more money out of them. And if you did, you wouldn't get any out of them anyway. And these guys actually missed a meal to do that. If you went to church on Saturday night at the gathering, you didn't get no dinner Saturday night. They didn't save nothing for you or anything else. So, the sacrifice was there from the guys. And it's been everything that changed my life. It's changed my life so much. I don't know. So the compassion that I've seen here is the real compassion that we're talking about. It's what can I do? What can I do to make things better for you? I really don't know how to close this out. I just can't thank the people in this room and in this community enough for everything that they've done. Our buddy Bruce, he's not here. He's the one that exposed me to everything, because I was working with Bruce, and that's how I tied up with the gathering and everything else. And he's going to be back in a couple weeks, right? Better be. So we miss him a lot. Another good example of compassion is Abby and Matt. Me and Matt were talking, and we all know that, or anybody that knows Rob had a bit of a problem, a medical problem this last week. And Matt said, I'm going down. And Abby went to spend a couple days with him. Matt says, I'm going down there to spend a weekend with him. He says, I don't know what I can do, but I'm going. Well, sometimes just being there is compassion. The other thing that goes back to what we were talking about with looking at your heart and the kids and everything else. It's not. It's another good friend of mine right over there. When I first started talking about doing his teaching on compassion, said that I brought up the fact that, well, you know, on its face, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of compassion going on in the Bible. I mean, wiped out 3,000 here, wiped out a whole city here. You know, they're killing a bunch of people in this thing. You know, and Kristen pointed out to me that compassion isn't always being nice necessarily to somebody and telling them what they want to hear. Compassion sometimes telling you what you don't want to hear.